Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, Diverse Goddess. It's Hannah, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about subtle forms of scapegoating in a family or less extreme versions of scapegoating. And I'm going to be talking about the movie Home Alone and Kevin McCallister's character as an example. So keep watching. So in my last video or previous video, I had shared or talked about scapegoated children on a global level or even a very extreme level. But today I'm going to be talking about scapegoating that goes on families that's actually very, very subtle and sometimes even goes unnoticed because it's so subtle. So most of us have seen the movie Home Alone 1 or Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. And if you haven't, it's basically about a little boy who gets left behind often. And in the first one, he gets left behind while his family goes on vacation and he's left home alone, hence the title. And in the second one, he doesn't get left behind, but he accidentally goes on the wrong flight and he goes to New York, so he was home alone but lost in New York. But anyway, his character, Kevin McCallister, who is played by Macaulay Culkin, is a great example of scapegoating on a very subtle level. And the reason why the movie Home Alone and Kevin's character and the dynamics that go on in his family is a good example of subtle scapegoating is because, for one, Kevin isn't physically being hurt in any way. Everything appears normal enough on the outside, and Kevin has a large family, a mom and dad that appear to care about him. He has siblings that seem normal enough. His father seems to do really well for himself and takes care of the family financially. The mother seems nice enough and takes care of the children, and all the kids seem healthy and happy looking enough. But in both movies, Home Alone and Home Alone 2, we do see that Kevin's character is indeed the family scapegoat. And in both movies, it was his older brother, Buzz, who is often the instigator. However, everyone else in the family also seemed to gang up on Kevin. And oftentimes when it's a sibling, like in this movie Home Alone, it's his older brother Buzz, people oftentimes give it a pass and chalk it up to just, will siblings fight or older brothers mess with younger brothers or younger siblings, and they just chalk it up to sibling issues and they don't acknowledge it for what it really is, which is scapegoating. However, Buzz, his older brother, in both movies intentionally tries to mess with Kevin or intentionally tries to embarrass him. And when Kevin reacts and tries to defend himself, chaos oftentimes broke loose, like in the first one. In the first movie, the whole family gather in the kitchen to have dinner, and they're all having pizza. And Kevin's favorite pizza was cheese pizza, and his older brother Buzz knows this, and so he intentionally ate all of Kevin's pizza on purpose so there wouldn't be any left for Kevin. And Kevin asked, did anybody order any cheese pizza, because he didn't see any. And Buzz says, yes, but if you want some, someone's going to have to barf it all up. So he did this intentionally, and this obviously upsets Kevin because he also knows that this was done on purpose. So he pushes Buzz, and after he pushes Buzz, it makes everyone else react, and then there's a huge mess made out of the chaos. So after everyone gathers themselves a little bit after the chaos, they all stare at Kevin. The entire family looks at Kevin, and they point the finger at Kevin. And it's almost like a group attack, except it's not physical, it's more verbal. And even his uncle says, "Look what you did, you little jerk." Furthermore, Kevin is also the one who's not only blamed for this situation, but he's the one who's punished. So he gets sent all the way to the attic, and he is punished because he's seen as the one causing issues. And he even asks his mother, why is he the only one getting dumped on? And she says, you're not the only one being dumped on, you're the only one who's acting up. So again, being the scapegoated child, you're seen as the troublemaker, even though in this case it was his brother, Buzz, who was the instigator. And Kevin's character was just trying to defend himself or was reacting from the instigation, which is a form of reactive abuse. And I will do a separate video on just reactive abuse because it's a real thing. But Again, he is the one seen as the issue. He even says and feels that everyone in the family hates him, which his mother brushes off, and instead of understanding him and where he's coming from, she basically dismisses it, and she sees Kevin as the issue. And also, Kevin does wish to have no family, basically, because in Kevin's defense, if you're oftentimes the one being bullied, why, and that is your family, and your family is a bunch of jerks, which Kevin expresses, then you would wish for no family. But because he says that, the mother not only sees him as the problem, but the bad guy, and almost like, do I have a heartless child, basically. She doesn't really see the root issue as to why he's responding that way. And that's oftentimes the issue with most scapegoated children, because when they react to the mistreatment that's being done to them, even if it's not physical. And like I said, this is a very subtle form of scapegoating. Very few people understand the child because they are the ones experiencing it. Everyone else in the family kind of act oblivious and act like, again, only that child is the issue. Everyone else is fine. In the second Home Alone, Buzz's character messes with Kevin again, except this time it was at a school performance where they were singing. And so Buzz embarrasses Kevin. Again, Kevin reacts and chaos breaks loose, but Kevin is blamed again for that. Buzz's character apologizes to the whole family and also apologizes to Kevin. However, he does it in a very deceitful way. He kind of whispers to Kevin after he kind of knows he has the family in the palm of his hands and says, "Beat that, you trout sniffer." So his apology was insincere, and this upsets Kevin because there's no sincerity there, so he knows his brother is messing with him again. And so he reacts and starts saying some blunt truth to the entire family, and everybody stares at him and blames him, and he's sent off by himself again. And the mom says that this time it's different because Buzz apologized. So this is proof that the family knows that he's oftentimes dumped on, but they don't acknowledge it. But they know it because she wouldn't have said this time Buzz apologized. And oftentimes what happens in families like this, they will blame the scapegoat, but they will hardly or rarely will they ever hold the person doing the instigating accountable. Everyone just ignores it as if everything is normal. But this is oftentimes very hard to see in a family, or to see this dynamic playing out in a family like this, because there's no evidence of physical abuse, and it's very hard to even prove that there's some emotional abuse going on, because everyone's human, everyone has bad days, or everyone says mean things to each other, especially among siblings. People chalk this up to sibling issues, but this is, in fact, a form of scapegoating. And yes, the movie Home Alone was just that, a movie. However, this dynamic goes on in a lot more families than people realize, and a lot more kids are going through this type of scapegoating than people realize. And it doesn't make it less hurtful just because it's a less extreme version of scapegoating. But anytime a child is singled out or being dumped on, that child will feel isolated and alone. And oftentimes, like Kevin's character, where he wished he didn't even have a family, or in the second one where he wished he could go on vacation alone without his family, because that's how upset and how isolated and alone a scapegoated child feels. That it's almost as if they don't have a family, or they might as well not have one because of how they are being treated. And again, because this is not acknowledged and it's denied by everyone else in the family, they oftentimes feel misunderstood, and they don't feel included, and they don't feel seen. Why would they want a family that's treating them that way? But in situations where the scapegoating is so subtle, like I said, it oftentimes goes unnoticed or unacknowledged. And even for the scapegoat themselves may not even know that that's what's happening, because everyone else around them either acts oblivious, denies, or they just act like everything is fine, even though the scapegoat will feel all the feelings of a scapegoated child, meaning they will feel isolated, they'll feel alone, they'll feel misunderstood, they'll feel like they don't belong. So they'll have all the symptoms, but because it's so subtle, this type of scapegoating, they'll oftentimes will indeed feel like maybe they are the problem. And not only will the family oftentimes tell the scapegoated child that they're being too sensitive, or in this case where there's a sibling involved, they'll just tell the sibling, well, that's just your older brother or your older sibling, or whatever the case. But regardless of whether or not it's an extreme version of scapegoating where there's like physical abuse and physical harm and all those things, it's still sick. It's still a sick dynamic going on, and it's sick. Family members will oftentimes side with the bully or the narcissist or the one doing the instigating. But that is the reality in the life of a scapegoated child. I have mentioned before that the scapegoated child, or the one that is chosen to be the scapegoat, is oftentimes the sacrifice for the family. So that means that everyone else in the family matters but the scapegoat. And everyone else in the family is like, there's like an unspoken understanding about that, and they don't really acknowledge that the scapegoat even exists other than for being dumped on. And the scapegoat doesn't really exist in the family except for that purpose. And so even in the movie when Kevin was left behind, that's subconsciously how they feel about Kevin. And again, like I said, even though that's a movie, it was very well depicted in that sense, because that is the reality for a scapegoat. People in the family not only forget the child, like in the movie Home Alone, where he's literally left behind, and the only time they showed any care for Kevin was when they actually noticed that they did indeed leave him behind. And if they didn't show any care, you know, they would have come off as even worse parents than already. And in some cases, yes, some parents wouldn't even care if they left their child behind. But in this particular movie, his parents were seen as normal, and so they cared about Kevin. Of course, they didn't mean to leave him behind, but subconsciously, that's how a family feels about a scapegoat. They leave them behind. They don't matter. Everyone else matters but the scapegoat. And that is the subconscious things that are going on in family dynamics that have a scapegoat. And even in Kevin's situation, or in the movie, Buzz's feelings, his older brother, who was the one who was always messing with Kevin, his feelings mattered more than Kevin's. And every time Kevin tried to defend himself, he was seen as the one causing issues. And I have said this in a previous videos, that narcissists oftentimes set up the person that they're targeting. And I'm not saying that Buzz's character is a full-blown narcissist, but he is a form of bully, and I would say he's on the spectrum. And so he was always setting up his brother. And what is also sad is that scapegoated children often love their families for real. Like even Kevin's character, he indeed loved his family, but he didn't feel that his family loved him. And that, again, is another reality for scapegoated children. And oftentimes, if they express this, it will be denied, and people will say, of course your family loves you. Or the family themselves will say, of course we love you. But the scapegoated child sees very little evidence of that, which again makes them feel even more isolated when what you are experiencing in real time is denied, and people tell you it doesn't exist when it actually does. The problem when you're the scapegoated child is you're the one experiencing all the mistreatment, and regardless of how harsh or extreme or subtle it is, you're the one experiencing it. Everyone else is doing the mistreatment. And this might be a very extreme example, but it explains how a scapegoat feels and how everyone else feels around them very well. It would be as if, like, I have a knife and I go and stab somebody. The person being stabbed is the one feeling all the pain and all the anguish. Me, on the other hand, I don't feel anything. And so it's easy for me to say, just get over it. You're being too sensitive. What's the problem? I'm not hurt. And that is the experience that scapegoated children have. Like I said, regardless of how extreme or subtle it is, they're the ones always, whether it be physically stabbed or emotionally stabbed, spiritually stabbed, they're the ones being stabbed. while everyone else is doing the stabbing. And that is why this is such a sick dynamic, because everybody looks at the one being stabbed as being the sick one, and they look at everyone else who's doing the stabbing as normal. That's sick. And that is why some children who have a less extreme version of being a scapegoat don't even know it's happening to them, because they're told that it's normal. But like I said, they will have similar side effects as those children being scapegoated on an extreme level. But anyway, to wrap up today's video, the movie Home Alone and Kevin's character was just an example of a child being scapegoated within a family. And again, it was a more subtle version of a child being scapegoated within a family. But whether it's extreme or subtle, it's still very hard for people to see through and to see what's really going on within a family and the dynamics taking place. And it's still hard for the child who's being scapegoated to go through it, whether it be extreme or subtle. So on that note, I'm actually going to end today's video. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comments section below. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and turn on notifications. And I will see you in the next video. Bye!